So I just want to echo Dr. Emery's comments about Dr. Covey. We had a great dinner yesterday with Dr. Chen and Dr. Covey and some of the residents as well. So thank you for everything that Dr. Covey has done for the department and continues to do. So one of the things that's been a honor or a fun part about being the program director is the opportunity to introduce the visiting professors that come in for the name lectures that we have as part of each academic year. And this is the opportunity to introduce Dr. Chen. This year's Covey lecturer is a real big honor for me. Dr. Chen is really one of the leading figures in American academic surgery. He's currently the Surgeon-in-Chief and Chairman of the Department of Surgery at the University of Alabama-Birmingham. He started there in October of last year. This is after he had spent 15 years at the University of Wisconsin. He rose up through the academic ranks very quickly at the University of Wisconsin, and now has assumed the chairman position at one of the leading academic surgery departments in the country. Dr. Chen had received his medical school training at Duke University, where he graduated AOA. He went on to complete his general surgery residency and surgical oncology and endocrine fellowships at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. And as I mentioned, after finishing his surgical training, went to the University of Wisconsin, where he spent 15 years prior to becoming the chairman at Birmingham. Dr. Chen really checks all the boxes in terms of an academic surgeon. He's held numerous leadership positions in many of the major academic surgical societies, including being the past president of the AAS. He's the current secretary and treasurer of the Surgical Biology Club, and he's the president-elect of the Society of Clinical Surgery. He's been continuously funded by the NIH since 2003, and his lab looks at the role of Notch signaling in thyroid and neuroendocrine tumors. He's served on numerous NIH study sections. He's an active editor of many of the most impactful surgical journals in the country. He's authored over 400 peer-reviewed manuscripts. He's mentored over 100 faculty, postdoc fellows, residents, and medical students. And so he really is a distinguished speaker, and it's our honor to have him here as the 2015-16 Covey lecturer.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Covey, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to visit. It's an honor truly to be here, and it's very exciting for me to speak about a topic that I'm very passionate about, academic surgery. I'll have to tell you this, the idea to sort of put together this talk was not mine. A friend of mine actually said, well, why don't you just put together some vignettes of your experience, and that's what I've done. And as we go along, certainly I'll invite all of you to ask questions throughout the presentation or definitely at the end. But as we all know, academic surgery often feels like you're trying to walk a tightrope, where you're trying to balance your clinical responsibilities, your administrative responsibilities, research, teaching, and of course with your family. And so I do want to credit the individuals listed here because they helped us put together this book, Success in Academic Surgery, which actually summarizes a lot of the points that I am going to make today, and I've lifted some of my points from their chapter, so I do want to give them credit. And so this talk is going to be in the top 10 David Letterman fashion, with some video showing some of our faculty.
Here are the top 10 strategies for success in academic surgery.
So this is Jaylene Grams, one of our minimally invasive surgeons at UAB.
Number 10, start now.
So Greg Kennedy's our Division Director for Gastrointestinal Surgery, and so this point, number 10, is really geared towards the trainees in the audience, the medical students and the residents. There are things you can do right now to begin your career in academic surgery. And first of all, I think you should start by building a slide portfolio. So whenever I see an interesting talk or a talk that contains slides that I could potentially use, I always ask the individuals for their slides. So Nipun Merchant is a head of Surgeonc at the University of Miami, a friend of mine. He gave this great talk at one of our grand rounds, so I have this slide deck, and I have some of his slides actually in my presentation. So I'll offer to anyone who wants a copy of my slides today, you can have them. Just shoot me an email and I'll be glad to give them to you. It's herbchen@uab.edu. When you see a great case, great picture, take a picture of the radiograph, in this case CT. And of course, you're all going to see some fantastic cases during your training. And so with the ability to take pictures with your iPhones right away, you take a picture of these cases, and nothing gives a better presentation of your operative ability when you go off into practice and give talks, if you can give examples of the cases that you've done even as a trainee. So again, get canned talks, pictures of cases you've done. And also, before you leave your training area, obtain templates, because all of your mentors probably write a ton of letter of recommendations for residents and students. Get examples that you can use as you have to learn to write your own. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're going to review for journals, get examples from your mentors of how they review journal articles and what format they use, what letters they send the referring doctors, and if you use the electronic medical record. I used to be in Epic at Wisconsin. We moved to Cerner, but I took all my templates with me that I dropped into Cerner, and we used to give all our fellows our Epic templates, so if they ever had used Epic again in their new job, they didn't have to reinvent everything. And I always encourage trainees to publish in your future area as much as possible. So when I left Hopkins and finished my training and started at the University of Wisconsin, I set up meetings with all the people that I was going to work with clinically, like the endocrinologists, especially the medical oncologists. And instead of them meeting me sort of as a brand new trainee who might not know anything about the field, I was able to bring them papers that I had written as a trainee on the topics parathyroid and thyroid, and where I wanted to practice clinically. So I think they realized that I had some expertise, although it was from my training, but they still gave me the benefit of that knowledge and were very quick to send me patients right away because of the research I had done as a resident. So number 10 is start now.
Number 9, find great mentors.
So Melanie Morris is one of our colorectal surgeons, and she's chief of general surgery at our VA hospital right across the street. And so everyone realizes the value of mentorship, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where the word mentor comes from. It actually comes from the story of Odysseus. And as we all know, from Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus was king of Ithia, and he entrusted the care of his household to Mentor, who served as a teacher and overseer of his son. And during the 10-year Trojan War, Odysseus, as you know, was condemned to wander vainly in his attempt to return home, and his son went in search of him. And during this search, his son was accompanied by Athena, a goddess of war, who assumed the form of Mentor. And as the story goes, they were successful to cast down the usurpers of Odysseus' throne. And in time, because of this story, the word mentor became synonymous with trusted advisor, friend, teacher, and wise person. So what is the modern definition of mentor? And I think we can all agree it's usually a trusted friend, a counselor, a more experienced person. And there's a relationship between a mentor and a mentee. And it's both personal and professional. And it involves someone who's actively doing something, and the focus involves advancing the educational and personal growth of the mentee. So when we recruit faculty to UAB, and we also did this at Wisconsin, we really focused on finding them great mentors. And so when I took my first job at Wisconsin, my mentor, or one of my mentors, was Norman Drinkwater. And he was chosen for me, and I chose him because he was experienced, he had trained clinician scientists, he was available, he wasn't overcommitted, and he was able to read my grants, and he was very comfortable. He was not seeking to advance his own career, but was really invested in me, such to the point that to this day, my lab was embedded in his lab for almost 2 years, and we wrote a lot of papers, and to this day, he and I do not share a single paper that his name and my name are not on a single paper together. And that's because when I first wrote my first research paper and I gave it to him to read, he told me, you know, I don't want you to put my name on this paper. And I said, well, is it really that bad? Is that you don't want to be associated with it? And he said, no, because if I put my name on it, people will think that's my work, and that's really your work. And it's important for people to realize that these are ideas that you had, and this is your work. And so I've tried to do the same with a lot of my mentees as well who start their lab careers, is to make sure that I'm not on many of their papers, if any. And so what we've done, when I first went to UAB just 5 months ago, we didn't really have a good mentoring program. And so what we've created is a mentoring program for all of our assistant professors. When they come in, they're assigned a mentor who is either an associate or full professor. And the key thing is we assign this person to be outside their division. And the reason we do this is because there are going to be times, obviously your division chief or your other more senior partners are going to help mentor you as well. But there may be times where the division needs you to do something which may not always be in line with what's best for your career. So we felt it very important to identify a mentor outside of that fold who can really focus on providing the best advice and really promote the mentee. And clearly we try to choose people with a similar area of focus, whether it be clinical research education, and we have them meet every 6 months to provide guidance and feedback. And what they're required to do, the mentor is required to write a central report of that meeting and send it to Marshall Urist, who is one of our senior faculty members, who's agreed to oversee this mentoring program. And again, the goal is to make sure every assistant professor continues to advance towards their career goals. And so, so far I think it's going well. I've got a lot of positive feedback from our young faculty saying that they think this has been very beneficial. Because really mentorship should be like this. These are the endocrine fellows I had the privilege of training when I was at Wisconsin. And it should be that this is our first fellow to the most recent. Really, mentorship should be that every person lifts the person behind them higher than they could have ever been before. So number 9 is find great mentors.
Number 8, obtain the right equipment.
So Jeff Kirby is our division chief for trauma and acute care surgery. And what I mean by obtain the right equipment is that there's a lot of things today that you can use to make your life as an academic surgeon more efficient and better. And obviously I don't have to tell the young people in the audience the importance of a cell phone. But it's surprising. When I was at Wisconsin, not all of my faculty in general surgery had a cell phone, and I had to work hard to have them all get a cell phone. But how many times do you see people who have cell phones who run out of charge on their phone, right? And they don't carry additional chargers. So I carry a ton of chargers with me. I probably have 2 in my bag here. I have one at my desk, one in my bedstand, one in my car. I carry this adapter in case I'm riding someone else's car that doesn't have a charger in it. But really, your phone is so important to you. Why would you ever take the risk of having your battery run out? But now I have a Mophie now, and you can see Mophie was one of Oprah's favorite things in 2013. It's really been great because now I never run out of power with the Mophie, so I never have to worry. I can just flip the switch when the battery runs out, so I would highly encourage this. I also carry a lot of thumb drives when I'm supposed to give talks. I usually carry 3. And because I've had this happen, it just happened to be yesterday. I had to give our cancer center grand round before leaving, and my first thumb drive failed with my talk on it. And so I was fortunate to have a couple backups. Again, something inexpensive that you can carry. And this is actually something I also carry in my bag. I have one also a few at home. Now, how many times are you at the airport and everyone is competing for the only outlet that is there to plug your computer or cell phone? Or you go to a hotel room with your spouse and there's only one outlet there at the nightstand and both of you want to plug your iPhone in it at night. So carrying this outlet adapter, which costs about $3.50 at your local hardware store, immediately can solve any marital conflict in the hotel room, but also allows you to plug your computer in at the airport. And so when I gave this talk at the University of Wisconsin for Grand Rounds, the chief of vascular surgery texted me this picture of him later on the week where he was at the airport with his outlet adapter using it and sharing it with people there. So number 8 is obtain the right equipment.
Number 7, use the web and media effectively.
So Mike Chen is our division chief for pediatric surgery and surgeon-in-chief of Children's of Alabama. And one of the things when I went to UAB is their website was horrendous, and I commented about that because it had outdated information. They had people on there that had already left, the wrong titles for people, so we've made a big push to revamp the entire website for our department. And I hired a director of communications, Megan Yates, who's done a fantastic job overhauling our website, making videos for all our faculty, actually getting up-to-date pictures of our faculty, and really working with the health system to establish good content on the UAB Medicine website. And we're doing a whole bunch of these other things listed here. And clearly, I think it's important because we've gotten to almost everyone that visits you, certainly everyone that applies to your program is going to look at your website. Everyone who visits us always says they look at our website to get information. And this is really your face to the world. And then we're in the process of UAB Medicine had a lot of bad information on there, so our surgeons are helping them put accurate information so patients can get to us in a better manner. Now, you can also utilize the website not only for clinical development, but for research development. So we have spent a lot of time for our lab website. And so I'm just going to show you a video. It's funny because one of the students was in my lab. Kevin Chapet is one of your ortho residents who did a fantastic job in our lab. I was just talking to him before this talk. He stopped by, and he mentioned that he watched this video about our lab because this was made after he left. So I'm just going to show you a brief snip of it.
I wonder what the lab is up to.
I stay up too late. Got so much on my plate. That's what people say. That's what people say. I got so much left to do. Thank goodness for my crew. At least that's what people say. That's what people say. But I keep typing. Can't stop, won't stop writing. It's like I got these.
But in any case, I'm not going to bore you with all of it because it continues on for the entire song. But people watch this and they think, hey, yeah, well, this is really interesting what they do. They look like a lot of fun. Maybe I want to come work with them. And so in addition to that video, we put what we've done, obviously. But because of the website, we have had over 13 postdocs who have come to our program self-funded, who have money from usually their home institution, and say, hey, I want to come work in your lab. And so these are some of the people listed here, and many of them are faculty now at their institutions back in their home country. But I would argue they perhaps maybe would have never come to us or chosen us had we not done such a good job of putting all this stuff on our website, which attracted them to come take a look at us. So clearly I think that's really helped us. So number 7 is use the web and media effectively.
Number 6, follow your gut.
So Devin Eckhoff is our division director for transplant surgery. And so I study, and my lab has studied neuroendocrine cancers, which we all know are hormone-secreting tumors that develop throughout the body, especially in the GI tract. But we know they're pretty uncommon. So when I first began my career in research, people really discouraged me from doing research in neuroendocrine disease. And they showed me pictures like this where they said, well, you should really look at the cancers where the money is. There's a lot of money in breast cancer, lung cancer. Look at how much money is in carcinoid and neuroendocrine. You'll never be able to get a funded research program. Plus, if you look at the leading, for the incidence of new cases of cancer or the death rate in cancer, neuroendocrine is nowhere on this list. So no one will care about the research that you do. But as you all know, neuroendocrine cancers are rare, but we do need further treatments for it because other than surgery, there's no real effective therapies. And plus, people can have devastating symptoms from the endocrinopathies that are associated with these cancers, and including the symptoms here. So there are other reasons that you need options for palliation. So I've had a lot of experience reviewing grants on study sections for the NIH and foundations, and my experience really has been is this. So these are actually critiques from some of the grants we have put forth on neuroendocrine tumors. And I would argue if you can really tell people why the question is important and show how passionate you are about the disease process and what unanswered questions remain, you can sell it and people will be willing to give you money to do research on that. So you can see that they say that the translational goal well-defined, application significance is high, profound implications for the management of neuroendocrine tumors. These are refractory group of tumors, potential significance is high. Medullary thyroid cancer is of considerable importance. The research proposed is highly significant. GI neuroendocrine neoplasms are of obvious importance. So again, this is a rare tumor, right? But if you can sell why you think it's important and why the need is, I think they listen to you. So number 6 is follow your gut.
Submit a lot of grants.
So Liz Byerly is one of our pediatric surgeons who runs a very active lab, and she is constantly submitting grants. And so when I think of a grant, I use a baseball analogy. Is like a funded grant is like a home run. So if you look at Major League Baseball and you look at the home run leaders, and these are the home run leaders in Major League Baseball, and here's home runs columns here, you can see a lot of home runs, but if you look at their strikeouts, all of them strike out much more than they hit home runs, especially Mr. October, Reggie Jackson here. You can see he's hit over 500 home runs, but he struck out over 2,500 times. So that's one home run for 5 strikeouts. And so why do they strike out? Because they're swinging for the fence, right? They're trying to hit the ball as hard as possible. And if you do that, you are going to miss a lot of times. So that's the same thing I think about grants, is that you need to write a lot of grants because it puts your ideas on paper. As surgeons, we have the great ability to send to specialty societies for which only surgeons can submit to. And then usually we ask people to start with a K award if they're going for an NIH grant. But really the number of funded grants that you have is directly proportional to the number that you submit. So if you never go to the plate, you'll never hit a home run. So what we try to do is submit as much as possible. And you really need to grow tough skin when you submit a grant. Because usually you're going to get comments back and you want to address all those concerns and submit them back. So in my first 8 years on the faculty at Wisconsin, I submitted 163 grants. And during that time we got 41, so our funding rate was 25%. But so what that means is that I got 3 rejections for every time I got a positive result. So I got slapped in the face 3 times. That's probably a little better than Reggie Jackson, who was 5 strikeouts for 1 home run, but still, it's a lot of rejection, and you have to deal with it. And you have to realize this happens to everybody. So this is a great quote from Mickey Mantle. During my 18 years, I came to bat almost 10,000 times. I struck out about 1,700, walked about 1,800. And you figure a ball player will average about 500 bats that season. So that means he played 7 years without ever hitting the ball. And that's what it feels like a lot of times. So what I'm putting up here is I'm actually putting some comments that I've received on my grants to show you that it is not pleasant a lot of times. So you can see, in summary, this proposal lacks consideration of various issues. A more focused research effort is likely to benefit this relatively young investigator. And this was just a few years ago, actually, so I'm glad they thought I was young. Look at this. The lack of attention to detail in the application is concerning regarding my qualifications as principal investigator. There are multiple errors in the list of references, including repetition of several publications. So my reference manager put 1 reference twice. And because of that, you can see they think the lack of attention to the application is worrisome regarding the likelihood that I will successfully complete the proposed work. So this stuff is really painful, right? And it sounds very personal. But everyone gets stuff like this. even the most established investigators get a ton of negative comments. And you're right, if you get this, who would ever want to write a grant, right? But you have to sort of ignore this stuff, read the stuff that is actually factual and beneficial, and try to address it and submit the grant again. This is an example of one of the many grants that I've written where it's not even discussed. This is on medullary thyroid cancer. We submitted it back. I first submitted it in 2005. It took me 2 years to do all the work, and again, not even close to being funded. But then did work for another year and a half. It finally got below the funding line. You had to be under 15. And started funding in 2009. So a grant that I wrote in 2004, it took 5 years to get it funded. But I'm very fortunate we did this because this ran my lab for the last 6 years. It's provided all the funds to keep the people hired. And so this is a great quote from Winston Churchill. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. So number 5 is submit a lot of grants.
Number 4, join surgical societies.
So Tom Wang is one of our surgical oncologists. And so I do want to talk about a few societies which I'm passionate about, and one of them is definitely the Association for Academic Surgery, or AAS, which John mentioned. So the AAS is a fantastic organization, and it's an organization meant for young people, young faculty, residents, and medical students. The organization recently had their annual meeting called the Academic Surgical Congress in conjunction with the Society of University Surgeons in Jacksonville this past February. And the AAS was founded in 1967. It is the largest organization of academic surgeons in the world. There's over 4,000 members. And it's a fantastic organization to be a part of. They put on these courses, the Fundamentals of Surgical Research course, Career Development course. We send all our residents to this course. Happens in the fall at the American College of Surgeons, but they run the same course in West Africa, Colombia, Australasia, France, all over the world. So if you're a member of the AAS, you perhaps can participate in teaching this course. And this is a picture of our group of our faculty and residents at the AAS meeting. But really, this organization provides an opportunity, and this is us at the big dinner. The benefits is the AAS, all the leadership positions are taken by young people. You can only be an active member your first 10 years on faculty. So all the officers, all the committee members, you have to be a young person. And it allows you to interact with people from all over the country and all over the world who are trying to do exactly what you're doing to start a career in academic surgery. There are committee places specifically held for residents, so residents can run for committee positions, they can run for counselor, and medical students can be members as well. And it is really a fantastic organization where you can first learn how to become a leader at the national level. So I would encourage everyone to join, and we do have everyone in our faculty and our residents to join. Now another society I feel passionate about is my own subspecialty society, the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. And so each of you, when you go into your specialty, you'll have a subspecialty meeting that you like, and this is one of my favorites, and it's going to be in Baltimore next month. And as part of the meeting, as endocrine surgeons, we like to think we're very social, but there are a lot of social events, such as there's a golf outing, a run, and a tennis outing. And I would encourage all of you to participate in the social events which are at the meetings, which I always do. And I'll just give an example. So this is one tennis of the tennis outings where I was paired actually with Art from Michigan. And I had never met him. He's an endocrine surgeon. We were partners. We played all afternoon. Fantastic serve. We did very well. So I really enjoyed playing with him. But after the event, we had talked at the meeting as well. I got a letter from his chair asking me to write a letter for his promotion, which I gladly did, and he was promoted. But I would argue probably I would have never got that request had we not played tennis together and got to know each other well. And of course, I got to know him as a person, but I also got to know about all the things that he was doing professionally as well because we spent that time together. So I'll definitely encourage, that's how it's great to get to know people who are in your field doing social things. You get to know them in a totally different way. And this is just our group at UAB at one of the meetings, all socializing together. So we tend to do a lot of social stuff together as well. Another organization which some people don't even know about is the Society of Clinical Surgery. and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it because it's an organization worth participating in if you can. It was founded in 1903 by Harvey Cushing. There's only 60 active members, so it's hard to get into. It was the first American Surgical Travel Club, and so what happens, this organization meets every year at a different academic department. The academic department hosts, and the members come in and actually watch the surgeons at that department operate and do cases. So it's a fantastic opportunity for you to see actually how people are doing cases at other institutions. This describes how Mayo, Ochsner, Cushing, and Mumford described that they were bored listening to talks, and they decided let's start a new society where we watch surgeons operate, called the American Society of Clinical Surgery. And it first began at Hopkins, where they went to all the Halstead's former teaching area, and they went to Howard Kelly's operating room where they watched Finney do a pyloroplasty. As you know, Finney pyloroplasty was commonly done for ulcer disease. So it's a fantastic organization. We had the good fortune of hosting the meeting at UAB just this past November, and this year it's going to be at Yale. Again, a fantastic organization to get into. You have to get in before age 45. So number 4 is join surgical societies.
Number three, publish papers.
So Jamie Locke is one of our transplant surgeons, a superstar. She's got a funded health services research program. She publishes a lot of papers. So why do we publish papers? Well, obviously they're required for promotion, establishes expertise, shows productivity if you write grants, brings recognition to the department, and for trainees it allows you to obtain a job, I think. So I'll tell you, this is a paper that I never wanted to write. It is, you can see, a 33 patient series on minimally invasive parathyroidectomy. So Rob Udelsman, who was my mentor at Hopkins, approached me to do this paper when I was a chief resident. And he said, you got to put together this series for me. And I said, Dr. Udelsman, you know, I'm honored, but listen, I'm a chief resident at Hopkins. I don't have time to do this paper. I've got all these cases to do. And he said, no, you really have to take the time to do this paper because I think it'll be impactful. So as a dutiful resident, I eventually said yes, and clearly we did the paper. So when I was at Hopkins, I took a research fellowship, and I had the good fortune to work with some fantastic researchers, and we published in PNAS and in Nature. And so this is how many citations, but do you know what my #1 cited paper on my CV is? It is this paper, a 33 patient series. As of just last year, it was cited over 300 times. And I would have never guessed that a paper that I did not want to do would be my most cited paper, and it actually had turned out to be perhaps my most important paper in the sense that, so when I started at Wisconsin, I brought this paper around to show referring doctors what we could do, and when I was in Wisconsin, my most common operation was parathyroidectomy, by far, 2 to 1 of any other operation that I did, and that's because I think I did this new procedure which I had written the initial paper description on. So again, I would have never guessed this. So for the trainees in the audience, if your mentor tells you to write a paper, you should do it. So what are the obstacles to publishing papers? So my former chair at Wisconsin used to have this Rickards rule. He knows that people get up at 4:30 to go to the gym. Why not get up at 4:30 to write a paper? But one challenge is people often think, you know, it's not right, I need more data, that paper's not right. But that's true all the time. You can always add more data, the paper can always be better, but at some point you have to break the cycle and just publish the paper. And I'm shocked that people don't do this. So I'm an associate editor for a few journals, and so I get these papers, and we ask you to suggest reviewers. I struggle to find reviewers for papers, and so if someone gives me a name, I often use the name. So here's an opportunity where you can actually suggest someone who may be a little more friendlier to your paper, and yet most people don't do this. So I would definitely, when you submit a paper, suggest reviewers, and most likely you'll probably get one of them. And then again, rejection. Everyone faces this. And sometimes papers are rejected for no good reasons. But what you got to do is, if you've already done the work, there's so many journals, just submit it someplace else. We like to say in our research group, every paper has a home. And then once you publish enough papers, you want to get on the editorial board because it's good for promotion. It's prestigious, increases your chance to get published in that, and you can have an impact on the literature. And You can see Annals of Surgery is even read by people on Grey's Anatomy here quite frequently. So how do you get on an editorial board? Well, first of all, you've got to review initially as in what we call an ad hoc reviewer. So I'll put this out there. If any of you want to review paper, send me an email. I can get you a paper to review for either Annals of Surgery or Journal of Surgical Research. And so if you get an invitation to review a paper, of course, accept it and do a good job, do the review on time, and after you do enough, you can ask your chair or mentor to ask if it's appropriate for you to go on the editorial board. So I think the first journal which many surgeons will be on the editorial board is the Journal of Surgical Research, which is the journal associated with the AAS. And they do it in a very fair manner, is that they look at all the people who are not on the editorial board, who are reviewers at large, count how many reviews they do, and then they draw a line. So, okay, say everyone that has done more than 19 reviews, we're just going to put on the editorial board. So that's a fair way to do it. So obviously, if that's the way they do it, you have to do a lot of reviews, and the only way you're going to do a lot of reviews is if you put your name out there and ask to do them. So again, if you want a review for JSR, send me an email, and I'm happy to give you a paper. And this can happen if you're a reviewer for a paper. So Dr. Decker was an ad hoc reviewer, not on the editorial board, reviewed a paper, and the editor said, "Wow, great review. Please write a commentary. Please write a single author commentary that we'll publish on the paper." So who is Dr. Decker? So at the time, Marky Decker was one of our third-year general surgery residents who had done a fantastic job on a review. So again, these are great opportunities that are available for residents as well. So number 3 is published papers.
Number two, apply for traveling fellowships.
So Dan Chu is one of our colorectal surgeons at UIT. So as surgeons, we have the fantastic opportunity to travel around the world on someone else's dime. So there are many traveling grants or visiting fellowships. So the AAS has these 4, to Taiwan, to Australasia, Colombia, and West Africa. And again, it's restricted to only active members, so you have to be within your first 10 years of practice. And you can see all the people who have done these traveling fellowships. James IV Association, that's another association that sponsors travel for surgeons. They, in fact, give you money to travel for 6 weeks around the world. And what you need to do is that you need to be recommended by your chair and the James IV member. And so this is a fantastic opportunity to travel the world to meet other surgeons. And so these are the lists of the people who have done the James IV up to 2012. I was fortunate to do it in 2004. And these are all the places that I visited as part of that fellowship. And I had a fantastic time seeing all these different countries. The American College of Surgeons has 3 traveling fellowships. One common application due November 15th to Germany, Japan, and Australia and New Zealand. I was the chair of the committee that selected this a few years ago, and there are not that many people that apply, unfortunately. So, and they provided this amount of money to go. So again, a fantastic opportunity. For this opportunity, you have to be less than 50 years old. And you can see that this is so go to the college website if you're interested. And through these traveling fellowships, you get to meet a lot of surgeons. And so these are just some pictures of me scrubbed with surgeons throughout the world through the traveling fellowship. Because at a lot of these places, you actually can scrub and see exactly how they do things. And so for me, all of these people are now my good friends, and we collaborate in a lot of ways, and I visit them periodically now. But one of the best benefits I could say is that for a traveling fellowship, I brought my family with me to all of them. So my kids were young at the time. But how many kids can say that they've petted a koala, went to an Australian rugby game, went diving at the Great Barrier Reef, landed on a glacier, and fed a kangaroo? Probably not that many. So my kids still remember this. Now they're both in college, but they still talk about these experiences all the time and how they got to travel the world and do these unique things. And this was made possible because I'm a surgeon and I applied for a traveling fellowship. So number 2 is apply for traveling fellowships.
Number one, feed your family.
So Marty Hedlund's our executive vice chair for the Department of Surgical Oncologists. And so what do I mean by feed your family? Well, first of all, I do want to take a little bit of time to brag about Birmingham, Alabama. because many of you probably haven't been there. So Zagat actually rated Birmingham America's next hot food city, #1. And so I do have a video.
The country voted, and now Zagat is counting down America's next hot food cities. In first place, it's Birmingham, Alabama. This southern contender took the top spot due to a delicious combo of fine dining, barbecue, and a fresh batch of more casual restaurants. The food culture and the city itself has changed dramatically in recent years.
You have more people coming to Birmingham from different areas of the state, of the country. They come to Birmingham and seem to fall in love with it.
It's not transient. People come and they stay.
But in any case, so that was just my plug for Birmingham. But what I mean really by feed your family is that I'd perhaps best said by the chair who hired me, being Rickers, is that he felt the first obligation of a young surgical faculty member should be to their family, not to the department, and really encourage all of us to integrate our spouse into activities. So when he would have dinners, spouses were always invited. We encourage us to either text, call, or email your spouse throughout the day. In fact, my wife just texted me, as you can hear on my phone, just a second ago. But we try to communicate throughout the day, and that's my wife Harriet. But one of the things is that when I began my job at Wisconsin, she had been through a lot of sacrifice in my training and put her career on hold, and she's a very good photographer. So when we moved to Wisconsin, we decided that we would spend some time trying to develop her career. So she actually became a very, very busy freelance photographer. Was featured in the paper, and so I spent a lot of weekends holding light reflectors and lights during her photo shoots. But it was a great opportunity for me to do that, and I really did enjoy that. And so when you're thinking about your the different things that are important to you, and I show this picture of golf because I'm an avid golfer, and I go with guys on the golf trip every fall. And it's just amazing me how much time and money people spend on making their golf game better. And you can see I go to people's offices, they're trying to analyze their swing, they're buying new clubs all the time. But if you ask people what's the most important thing to them, maybe some would say their golf game, but probably most would say it's their relationship with their spouse or their family. But how much do you see people actually do things to make that better? And so one of the things that a friend suggested to me is that if you want to make your relationship better, you should read this book. And so I am a person not to read ever a book like this. And so when they suggested this to me, I said, there's just no way I'm going to read a book called The 5 Love Languages. But they said, no, you really should do it. It's really short. And so she said, you and Harriet should read it together. And I said, I brought it to her, and she said, okay, well, let's read it. And so how it goes is that everyone, according to the book, everyone has 5 languages of love listed here. And so we both read this book, and I have to say it totally made sense after we read this book. Because what was happening is, it can happen in any relationship. You know, I'm at work, I get a text, what time are you going to be home? I say one time, and inevitably I'm home an hour or more later than the time that I've said. And so, when you get home, you can already tell that you are in trouble when you walk in the door. And so what I used to do is so I knew I was in trouble. I'd walk in, and so my language of love is acts of service, being a surgeon, get the stuff done. So I would see there's a pile of dishes there. I would walk in, and I would just go to the sink and start doing them, thinking, all right, I'm going to get out of the doghouse by doing all these dishes, and everything is going to be fine. But what was really happening is she was getting madder at me as I was standing there doing this, because her language of love was quality time. All she wanted for me to do was to come home and sit down and just ask her how her day was and how things were going. And so we read this and we talked about it, and so I changed my behavior, which got me out of doing a lot of dishes, which was great. But also, it made our relationship better, because this is exactly what she wanted me to do. When I came home. So I've had a chance to give this talk a few different places, and actually at one of the places when I mentioned this, they their program actually gave this book to all of their incoming interns to read for them and their spouse to read prior to the beginning of residency. But I had some great role models who really emphasize you have to keep a balance, and one person did that well is Keith Lillamo, who is now chair at Massachusetts General. He was our program director at Hopkins, and every time I would operate with him in the operating room, he would just tell me everything that he was doing with his kids that day or what sporting event he was going to. So we encouraged us to obviously to stay involved in your kids' activities and to consider coaching a team. So when my daughter was young, I coached her soccer team, as you can see here, and I knew absolutely nothing about soccer. But at this age, it's really just bringing the balls and the treats, right? That's all you have to do. And that's what I did, and so I made the schedule of which family was supposed to bring the food. But my daughter remembers me as her soccer coach from when she was young. And I see one of the things I think faculty can struggle with is that the conflict that often can arise when your child has an activity and you have a commitment. And so what I always did, my kids are both in college now, but they were very active in sports. My daughter superseded my knowledge of soccer very quickly, and they were both active in theater. So what I would do is before the season began, I would be on the coach to get me the schedule, way in ahead before he hadn't even released it. And if our children were trying out for any musical, I would make sure if they tried out, they had to give me the dates of the show so I could put it on the calendar in case they got in the show. And so by doing so, my secretary understood if any of my kids had an event on the calendar, they were not supposed to schedule anything during that. And so by having your kids' events on your calendar, that takes away any potential source of conflict. Then you don't have to choose later on between something at work and something that your kids are doing. So I do want to end with this story. So my daughter, when she was a freshman in high school, made the varsity soccer team, and they were not actually very good that year. They were near the bottom of their conference, but an amazing thing happened is then when the state playoff came, they were not predicted to get through the first round of their divisional, but for some reason they upset a whole bunch of teams. They won the divisional, they went to state, and they actually won state. And my wife and I were able to see, this is my daughter here, every single one of those games because I did have that on my calendar, although I didn't think it would be a possibility. But it was already blocked off on my calendar, so then I could attend all these games. A lot of them were in Milwaukee, which is about an hour and a half away. So, an amazing experience. The remaining 3 years, her team didn't even get close to state, but it was a fantastic experience for us to see her experience this, and perhaps the only time we'll ever see that. And we were able to do that because I had asked the coach for the schedule in advance. This is Marty Heslin, again our vice chair. He is really big into work-life balance and making sure our trainees have that. So he takes our residents out and teaches them to make surf every year. This is just a picture of him and an outing with the residents at the annually. So I want to end with a quote from Ernie Banks. So Ernie Banks is regarded perhaps as the best player in Cubs history, one who rejoiced in the game and showed the enthusiasm of a dedicated Little League player. And he often commented that he couldn't believe he got actually paid to play the game. And that's what John Cameron, who was my chief when I was training, said to us. We used to have a Sunday school with him every Sunday morning as residents. And he would say that he often couldn't believe that he got paid to be a surgeon because he just loved operating. Because as a surgeon, I think we have the best career possible. And for the young people in the audience, I would say that being an academic surgeon is the best thing there is. So anyway, I hope I've summarized some of my thoughts about success in academic surgery. Again, thanks for having me here, and I'd be glad to take any questions. Yes. I think that's a great question, and often I think that is an issue that we face everywhere. So right now, I'm in the process of redoing our compensation plan with UAB, and what we're leaning towards doing is, so the revenue comes in the department based on RVU or based on clinical productivity, so you can't change that. But our health system is very clear. That's how we send it to you. That's not how you have to pay it out. And many departments at UAB have a formula for the clinical and academic productivity. So the compensation model that we're looking to employ would be one that rewards, that compensates 80% based on clinical productivity, and the other 20% based on academic productivity. So the plan which I'm proposing that we do is that once revenue comes into the department, the department actually takes a small academic incentive tax that we redistribute back to the divisions based on grant writing and grant success. And then the divisions, when they get their money, they'll allocate 80% of your RVU revenue to you. If you're at the VA, the salaries are passed through. If you have any grants, the salaries are passed through. And then the remaining 20%, the division director has to create an academic points list where he's going to decide, he or she, decide what they're going to reward academically, teaching, grants, and it has to be transparent given to the faculty member at the beginning of the fiscal year so they know where the points are so they can compete. And then at the end of the year, they'll add up everyone's points and divide up that remaining 20% based on academic productivity. And so I think we've proposed it. The division chiefs and our leadership are supportive of it. We have to work out some of the details as we employ, and then we have to roll it out to the faculty. But I think that that's so that's a system. You do have to incentivize clinical productivity, but it shouldn't be 100% because that doesn't represent all the things we have to do. I think 20% is a good number to reward. Maybe that'll have to change. But then I do also, there are other than compensation to reward good job. I actually send a weekly email to all the faculty congratulating people on things. So I try to really emphasize if someone has done a good job teaching, if someone got a grant, or someone got kudos for some of the things that we do that are undercompensated. And then we also try to provide opportunities for people who we're creating more teaching awards, and we're creating opportunities to send people off for meetings as a reward in addition. So I think there are many ways that you can incentivize those important misses in addition to compensation, and that's what we're in the process of doing. Just one question? Yes. I try to sleep 5 or 6. I don't need much sleep. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that Wisconsin, you're right, Wisconsin, higher education is in bad shape at Wisconsin right now. It doesn't affect the medical school as much because one of the things that Wisconsin has going in its favor is that it has the best payer mix of any university hospital in the country. So the Department of Surgery at Wisconsin has so much infrastructure because they have a lot of revenue. And that's one of the reasons why the faculty members have been very productive there, is because there's lots of infrastructure to support things. Now, in contrast to Alabama, which is a relatively poorer state than Wisconsin, but one of my attractions to go to Alabama is that the dean, Selwyn Vickers, who's a surgeon, a well-known academic surgeon, actually was very smart when he came as dean, created this fund. It's called the Academic Enrichment Fund. And what he argued is that for UAB to be competitive in academics, there had to be a source of money other than our clinical revenue and other things that come in to support. So we argued to create this fund, which when it gets fully funded, it'll be $55 million a year, and now it's $40 million a year, and that's money from the health system It's money from the insurance plan and money from partnerships throughout other health centers that are part of our network. They agreed to pay this tax, which he distributes for research and teaching. And so last year was $40 million that he just gave over to departments to support our academic mission. So my chair package came from there. A lot of our recruiting packages, a lot of the support, like our simulation center comes from there. Even at Wisconsin, like for simulation, every time our residents went in and swiped, our department got charged for the simulation. At UAB, the dean has said, I'm going to just pay for that, and so now we can develop simulation programs. So I think there are unique ways to do it, but they have to come really from the high up, and again, that's one of the reasons I chose this job, because he had so much wisdom to create a system like that. Yes? Right, so I'm a big fan of protected time, and I know a lot of people will say there's no such thing as protected time. I think there is. So an example of how we did it at Wisconsin, how I'm doing it at UAB, is when we hire faculty to run a lab or to do a health services research program, we actually do protect them and make sure they have at least 50% and up to 75% time where they can actually do their research. And we realize that they're not going to make their salary. Right? I mean, they're going to have to be funded either from the department or from other money that comes in. Now, at Wisconsin, traditionally, when we had done that, the rest of the division supported the young person because everyone who had done that before knew that they had the same amount of support when they started. And so, and you have to embed people who are doing that with a mentor who will actively mentor them. And we tend to, for basic science especially, we tend to put them away from the hospital and labs that they were physically distant from, so they wouldn't be necessarily seen and could do clinical work. At UAB, we're doing the same thing as everyone. I just hired a few young faculty that I'm buying their time with my startup package, and told the division chief they'll get salary support for the first 2 to 3 years to develop their research. But if they do that, all the people I've hired, they understand that, and that the money is dependent upon reaching certain benchmarks. That they have to, like for them to get the money in the first year, they have to submit at least one external grant. And so that was very successful at Wisconsin, and so I hope it's going to be successful at UAB as well. Yeah, either one of you. Well, don't get me wrong. I don't think we should only apply to NIH grants. We should apply. We have our faculty apply to a whole bunch of private foundations as well, all the surgical societies, anything that will award money for research. We ask our faculty to apply for. So I think private money or private. I'm funded by a private foundation largely right now too. I think those are great sources if you can partner with them. I think doing clinical trials research through industry is great too. That brings in money to do the scientific stuff and write papers. All sources, I think you really have to consider all sources, including philanthropy, to support research. I think people that, now I write a lot of promotion letters for people, and it's not only NIH funding that counts, all that type of fundings count because you do write a grant. What we really encourage people when they write grants also to obviously have someone read them before they go out. At our institution, they actually have with a week's notice, the institution will convene a panel of experts to read your grant and give you feedback if you want. So we encourage our faculty to use that process as well. So I'm, probably everyone has their own way that works. We're submitting grants continuously, so it's not just like one time of the year. We submit them around the deadlines for the NIH that come out, and we have a list. So one of the things that I did when I was the vice chair of research at Wisconsin is we have a running list of all the grant deadlines and when they're coming. And so what in my capacity as vice chair, what we used to do is I met monthly with our grant support people, and we would look forward to what grants are coming out, and we would target the faculty who are eligible and make sure that they would apply to them. Not everyone did, but everyone knew about them for sure. And so by warning people ahead of time, you can give them, but our lab really is focused on grant targets, knowing what grants are coming up, and talking forward of what we're going to do for the next 6 months. I tend to write my grants like I'll probably work on some on the plane back today. So I tend to try to use time that normally would be wasted to do a lot of the grant writing. And so I have a talk on time efficiency, but I try to do, and I really believe in, when I was more active in the lab before I had all this administration stuff, when I had a research day, I really did the research on my research day. I didn't let any of my clinical stuff spill because I tried to do all my I think if you can compartmentalize your time, you can find time in the week. I don't really like it when people block off around the grant deadline and just stop everything and work on the grant. I believe in continuous progress so, one example, so I do a lot of letters for, medical students and residents. So I used to only do the letters on my clinical days in between cases. I would dictate them into my phone and then email it to my secretary, and I would only review papers in between on the days, on my 2 operative days. I would just do them in between during the turnaround. And then I never did them during the other days because it would just burn my other time. Well, I think that using the media like the website, that is your face to the world now. And I think it does, how much of it you do, I think people would debate. We haven't started our Facebook site, although UAB Medicine and UAB they have very active Facebook sites, which I go on Facebook once a day in the morning and then like all the things that I need to like, and then, but my wife actually does more of that than I do. But I do think it's important to have some presence there. I have a Twitter account which occasionally I get on, but it just is so time consuming for me. What we've decided to do at UAB is at our last division chiefs meeting, I asked each division chief to appoint an associate director for communications, and I emphasized to really pick a young person. And so I hope that when each division selects that young person, they're going to be they're probably more likely to Twitter and more likely to use media to promote the things that they do. And they'll work with, you can see Megan is fairly young, very energetic. She does all the media outlets, and so she herself will probably be the focal point for a lot of our Facebook activity, and if we decide to Twitter a lot, the Twitter.